We had one that was attached to the wall. We could, your privacy is as long as the cord.
Weather look good for the steam show?
It does, yeah. Yeah, no rain at all. Hot though. The weather for the steam show. 90 maybe Saturday or Sunday night. Saturday's middle 80s. Friday's upper 70s. So it's supposed to be no rain. So it's the first week without any rain. They do. They pull them from all over. You know, they pull them from
Supervisor Seibert, are you able to log on?
Did I get me? That steam show, they made a big push for that Boone Fest. When the Boone Fest was squabbling, they made a big push for it. Oh, well, no,
Being 7 o'clock, we'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. And we'll have the reading of the notice, please.
The adjourned organizational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, at 6 p.m. to consider the following matters. The agenda was duly signed and posted.
I thank you, and we'll proceed on to, I'd like to request everyone please silence their cell phones and any other electronic devices not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. We'll move on to roll call, and I'd ask everyone to please sign in. All right, thank you. And I'd like to welcome the visitors that we have this evening with us, including the viewing audience, and thank you for your interest in county government. And we'll move on to item B, educational presentation and or report, standing committee chairs or designees. Item B7, any standing committee chairs or designees? Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you. Earlier this afternoon, the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee met, and we received a report from Dave Obrecht, who is the chair of the Tax Increment Finance District Task Force, and he outlined recommendations for changes, and they dealt with internal controls and how the county approaches the Joint Review Board for Tax Increment Finance Districts, how the Joint Review Board could work better, and then some suggestions on statutory changes. That those issues will go to executive committee, and to the chair will parcel them out to either the EEDC committee, potentially finance, and other committees of jurisdiction based upon that discussion. But I know a number of you are waiting for that report. He did give a presentation, so I encourage you to go look at the YouTube version of the meeting.
Also, just a side note, under the consent agenda, item number 13A 2, that item has been pulled, the accepting of the 5-year capital plan. That was reviewed by HR Finance this afternoon, but it was more informational than it is actually policy. So that's been removed from consent agenda. So any other standing committee chairpersons or designees as far as reports? Okay, we will then move on to consent agenda items C8 through items C13B, with items C13A2 being removed. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Drabek and seconded by Supervisor Rosenberg. Is there any discussion on those agenda items under the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Need Supervisor Boots and Supervisor Conway, please. Supervisor Conway. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried and is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item D, Environmental Resources Committee, item D14, text amendments to Chapter 17 Zoning Code, Tyler C. Hafer, Ordinance 24-24. And before we proceed, I'd ask Corp Counsel to give a little bit more clarity as to the information that we received from DADCAP that was sent out in an email to the board yesterday.
Sure. So I did provide the board the order that we received from DATCAP. They reviewed the proposed text amendment, and their administrative order is that it is not a certifiable text amendment. The legal effect of that is that if the board were to pass this text amendment, our farmland preservation zoning code would be found by DATCAP to also be non-compliant with statute and would subject the related tax credits and farmland preservation agreements to being revoked or not being claimed in the future. So I would strongly urge you to consider that in how you decide to proceed tonight, but it's ultimately the board's decision.
Okay. What is your pleasure? Again, we're at item D14, the text amendment. Okay, Supervisor Drabek first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't sure what to do with this, how this was set up on the motion and stuff, because,
Correct.
but otherwise I would offer a motion to deny. Can I do that here, or?
I'll look to Corp Counsel. Yes, a motion to deny would be in order, and so I would accept that motion. Yeah, and before we proceed to further discussion, is there a second to the motion to deny? Again, Supervisor Boots is making the second, and can you change that on the recording? So Supervisor Drabek with the motion to deny, second by Supervisor Boots. Correct. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Supervisor Drabek to deny, Supervisor Boots with the second, Supervisor Dickinson with the next discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the resolution that was passed by ERC included language that said if DATCAP turns it down, we would not move forward. Is that correct? I believe that's how ERC framed that.
Correct.
Okay. So we actually could still approve this, and it would still be in line with the decision of both ERC and DATCAP.
It's an interesting point. As written, the ordinance is contingent upon receiving DATCAP approval. So if the board approved it, it still wouldn't go into effect unless DATCAP approved it. I would be a little worried about the limbo that we would be creating, but no, I think you're right. As written, the ordinance is contingent on DATCAP's approval.
And if I could follow up, similarly, the mindset going into this process when it came to the board was that we would give it back to ERC without the ability to amend, so that in essence they were in essence forced to approve, which then it comes back to us basically forced to approve. So now we have a motion to deny, and it's just, I mean, the will of the board was to move forward with the amendment, but just not to violate the law. That was really what was presented to us. That's where we move forward. But now we have this. Well, now we're going to actually turn it down. It's just confusing.
Excuse me, any other discussion? I think the motion that was made by Supervisor Drabek, though, is to deny the approval of the text amendment. Is there any further discussion? Supervisor or Vice Chair Dickinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually would propose a motion to lay it on the table. And then no action would have to be taken at all.
It's not debatable. I can explain that.
Okay, I'll have the Corp Counsel parliamentarian explain the motion and its appropriateness.
Sure. So motion to table an item is in Robert's rules. It's certainly an available motion at this point. It does require a second. It's not debatable, and it requires a majority vote. The effect of laying something on the table in county government where we have to notice things through open meetings law is that the item won't come up again this session, but it won't, the effect will not be a yay or nay vote. It will simply table the item moving forward. So just so everyone is aware of the effect and what procedurally needs to happen, there needs to be a second. There is no debate on the motion to table. It's not debatable. So we would proceed immediately to vote. It's a majority vote. And if the majority elects to table the item, we move on to the next agenda item. And this matter would not be dealt with by this session.
Supervisor Boots?
So by this session, so does it automatically come up at another session, or somebody would have to bring it up, I would assume, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Okay, so there's been a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Marash to lay on the table. It is not debatable. Again, the Corp Counsel has clearly delineated that a yes motion would lay it on the table and would not be brought back up this term. A no vote will move the board back to where the motion was, and that was a motion to deny, and seconded moving forward. Any further discussion? So I need the clerk to be able to record the motion so that we can get to the vote. Is everybody clear what they're voting on? Supervisor Drabek, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a question because there was already a motion on the floor. Now we have another motion on the floor. Can we do that?
Yes, the motion to lay on the table is a subsidiary motion, so it can be applied to a main motion. In this case, your main motion was to deny. The motion to table then applies to that motion that's on the floor.
Okay, so we are voting on a motion to lay on the table rather than, and a yes vote in the majority will effectively lay this item on the table and not be brought back up this session. A no vote will force the board back to what the motion was on the table, and that was a motion to deny. Is everybody clear what they're voting on? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Supervisor Conway? And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried. And we'll move on to item number E, Human Resources, Property and Finance and Property Committee, Infrastructure Committee, an amendment to the 2024 budget, transfer from Highway Reserve Funds for emergency culvert repair on County Highway O, Resolution 36-24. Motion by Supervisor, oops, we need to move forward. Okay. Excuse me, we have a motion, and I apologize, because the board chose the path that it chose, we had to delete the actual, item text amendment 24-24, and delete it because it's not being voted on. And so now we are, motion by Supervisor Marash and second by Supervisor Corelli to approve the amendment to the 2024 budget transfer for from Highway Reserve Funds for an emergency culvert repair, County Highway O, or Resolution 36-24. This does require a 2/3 majority vote. Any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Supervisor Hoppe, could I have you vote, please? Thank you. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried and is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, Executive Committee, and the Infrastructure Committee. Item F16, a consideration of the final resolution regarding unconditional county guarantee of its pro rata share intergovernmental agreement and taxable revenue bond financing for Bug Tussle 2 LLC project. Resolution 37-24. We got a motion by Supervisor Seefeld and second by Supervisor Zhang. And Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've all heard the discussion relative to conduit bonding and the value of it. And I think this is a great example of a public-private partnership between Bug Tussle and Marathon County. And it actually started in July of 2021 when we partnered with them on a grant application to the Public Service Commission for middle mile fiber and towers that was not approved and then manifested itself into a conduit borrowing resolution that was adopted in November of 2021. And again, the reason we did that is that it served an unserved area of the county, provided us with 16 towers on which we can hang our equipment for public safety and other communication needs, and gave us 24 strands of fiber in addition to paying us 40 basis points or 0.4 of a cent on the outstanding balance of the loan. It was a 30-year loan with, and because of the nature of Wi-Fi, they're capitalizing the interest in the early years because there's not a cash flow necessary to cover those costs. And we went in and joined 4 other counties on a $78 million conduit bonding issue. $25 million of that was allocated to Marathon County, which they spent. And they didn't get the job done. And unfortunately, there were a number of reasons why the job didn't get done, primarily because of increase in cost and the finding of a lot more rock in the county. There were also some concerns relative to the contractor doing the work, but that contractor work did not necessitate the request that was coming in, rather it was the increase in cost. And we saw that issue show up when Frontier withdrew its request for funding with the Public Service Commission grant that was approved in 2022. We also made a commitment to partner with Bug Tussle relative to the Leather Camp area, Knowlton, Cronewater, and Gunther, relative to the expansion of fiber to the premise in 2022, and that work needs to be done soon under a Public Service Commission grant. And we floated around a number of ideas as to how we would go about paying for it. We had the request for $5 million of additional funding for the 2021 project and $3 million for the Leather Camp, which we had agreed to as part of the grant application process. I think the concern of this board has been over the issue of capitalized interest and some of those other closing costs, and the concerns that we carry that out for 30 years. We have, I think we've had some discussions very early in the process about whether we would use fund balance for the funding of this project. And we were exploring that, and we were looking at originally the terms of the original 2021 borrowing resolution, 3.45% interest. The decision was we would go out more with what we would earn, but there was concerns about tying up our reserves for that period of time. One thing I'm not very good at is counting, but I'm not sure that we have the votes today to pass that resolution with a 3/4 vote because we're missing some members of the board. We've also floated, again, the concept of using the reserve fund. And I think what we'd like to do is revisit that issue, which would reduce the amount of the borrowing from, if they need $8 million plus some additional costs, we can negotiate with them. We've had some very preliminary discussions as of 5:55 with Bug Tussle about that concept. They are willing to sit down with us. There's a potential that we could structure it 2 ways. We could have a quicker payback period on the Leather Camp project because that work is going to be done, and they'll be able to sign up subscribers and have a cash flow necessary to cover it, while we look at how do we fund on a long-term basis using reserve funds the capital cost associated with finishing that work on that ring and the towers. And with that explanation, I would move that we postpone consideration of this issue to no later than the October meeting to give us a chance to work with Bug Tussle on an appropriate agreement that would allow us to use the reserve fund for funding of this project and hopefully avoid some of the capitalized interest costs.
Okay, there's a motion to postpone to the October meeting. No later than the October meeting. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Supervisor Ritter. And just a second, I need the clerk to be able to catch up in open meetings, please. Thomas made the motion, and Supervisor Ritter made the second. Simple majority. Okay, we are at discussion. Discussion by the motion. Again, the motion is to delay to or postpone no later than the October voters meeting for the county board. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, we will proceed to vote. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried and is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to announcements and/or requests. The one announcement I have is on the agenda, we have the Thursday, September 25th meeting. Well, exec committee met and discussed the challenges with the Tuesday, the 24th meeting, because that is effectively the end of the WCA annual conference. And that's going to be held in La Crosse. That finishes up about 12:30 or 1 o'clock. And so a 3-hour travel time would make it very difficult in some cases to potentially have supervisors. So the executive committee decided to move all of the meeting to one meeting, and that one meeting will be the education and the voters meeting on September 19th, 2024. So just to clarify, there will be one meeting in September, and that will be the 19th. That will be also the education and voters meeting, and there will not be a meeting on either Thursday, September 26th, or Wednesday, September 25th. So any other announcements? Supervisor Radke, please.
Yeah, just Labor Day parade's coming up, and if anybody has an organization or something that wants to put a float in the parade, you can contact me or see me afterwards. So September 2nd, lineup's at 3 and parade starts at 4. Thank you.
Supervisor Drabeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind everybody that they had your STEAM shows on this week here. I believe it's starting Friday, goes through Sunday. And so pray that it doesn't rain, I guess. Thank you.
Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, we are down to item number G18. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Crivelli and seconded by Supervisor Kroll to adjourn. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
John, I had a speech prepared that was going to get us unanimous approval of that. You didn't even give me a chance.
No, you're fine.
Signed up. Yeah, not even for third. I know.